What do 63,440 passing yards get you? How about 421 touchdowns? For most quarterbacks, those numbers would make you an undisputed legend, but Philip Rivers isn't like most quarterbacks. He's one of the most polarizing figures the NFL has ever seen. A story that began with a dramatic draft day trade that would forever link him to Eli Manning. That awkward throwing motion, that fiery Southern attitude, and a career that's left fans and critics divided for nearly 2 decades. The guy who took over from Drew Brees and had to prove he wasn't just the consolation prize in the Manning trade. Talk about pressure. You've probably heard the debate. He's elite. He never won the big one. But here's the thing. When you really look at Rivers' career from that fateful draft day swap to stepping into Brees' shadow, you'll find something far more complex than just numbers or rings. Let's settle this debate once and for all. Just how good was Philip Rivers actually? Long before the draft day drama and the Manning trade, Philip Rivers was just a coach's son in Decatur, Alabama. But football wasn't just a game for young Philip, it was in his DNA. As part of a 5th grade project, he had to make a poster about his dreams and aspirations. On the poster, he pasted his face over that of a Minnesota Vikings player who had appeared on a cover of Sports Illustrated. His father, Steve, wasn't just his dad. He was his high school coach at Athens High, where Philip's journey really began. Behind that unconventional throwing motion, yeah, he had it even back then, Rivers was putting up video game numbers in North Carolina high school football. We're talking 11,635 passing yards and 94 touchdowns, numbers that made college scouts turn their heads despite that peculiar sidearm release. Then came NC State, where Rivers didn't just play, he rewrote the record books. 4 years as a starter, 13,484 passing yards, 95 touchdowns, and a completion percentage that had NFL scouts drooling. He was more than just stats, though. This was a kid who started 51 straight games in college. Sound familiar? That Ironman streak would become legendary later on. By his senior year, everyone knew Rivers was special. Draft experts were calling him a can't-miss prospect, even with that throwing motion that just wouldn't quit. The 2004 NFL Draft. That's where things got interesting. The Chargers had the first pick, but Eli Manning wanted nothing to do with San Diego. Meanwhile, the Giants, sitting at number 4, had their eyes on Rivers. What happened next would change the course of NFL history. The Chargers picked Manning first overall, the Giants grabbed Rivers at 4, and then the trade went down. Rivers to San Diego, Manning to New York, plus a handful of draft picks. Do you want to know more about Eli Manning's draft drama? Check the video showing the right side. The pressure? Immense. The expectations? Through the roof. Here was a guy who not only had to live up to being the 4th overall pick, but also had to justify being traded for Eli Manning. Welcome to the NFL, kid. Here's what it was like in 2004. Drew Brees was the guy in San Diego and Rivers. He was holding a clipboard. 2 full seasons of watching and learning. Some called it wasted time. Others called it a blessing in disguise. In those 2 years, Rivers threw exactly 30 passes. But he was watching, learning, preparing for his moment. That moment almost came earlier than expected. In the final game of 2005, Brees suffered a devastating shoulder injury, the kind that makes franchises rethink their future. The Chargers had a decision to make. Stick with their proven but injured starter, or hand the keys to the kid they traded for. They chose Rivers. Brees packed his bags for New Orleans, and suddenly the pressure was on. 2006. Rivers' time had finally come. But here's the thing about pressure. Some guys crumble, others turn into diamonds. First game as a starter? Rivers went 8-0 before his first loss. By season's end, he'd thrown for 3,388 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 9 interceptions. The Chargers? They went 14-2. The best record in football. We're talking about a team that was becoming a dynasty. LaDainian Tomlinson breaking the touchdown record, Antonio Gates dominating the middle of the field, and Rivers orchestrating it all. This wasn't just a good team. This was the beginning of something special. Rivers had turned the Chargers from Brees' old team into his team. The numbers were impressive, sure, but it was more than that. It was the way he commanded the huddle, the way he fought for every yard, that Southern fire that made teammates want to run through walls for him. But in the NFL, potential doesn't always equal success. And for Rivers and the Chargers, the real tests were just beginning. Let's talk about numbers for a second. Not just any numbers, we're talking about the kind of statistics that make you do a double take. During his peak years, Rivers wasn't just good, he was elite. 8 straight seasons with over 4,000 passing yards, 224 consecutive starts. Yeah, you heard that right. From 2006 to 2020, the man never missed a game. Ironman? That's putting it lightly. Remember that 2008 playoff game against the Colts? Rivers played on a torn ACL. Not just played, he threw for 217 yards and led his team to victory. The guy played 6 days after knee surgery. That's not toughness. That's legendary status. Or how about 2010 when he threw for 4,710 yards with guys nobody had heard of catching passes? Malcolm Floyd and Legadoo Nani Rivers made them look like Pro Bowlers. But let's address the elephant in the room, the playoffs. The near misses that keep Chargers fans up at night. 2006, 14-2 record, home playoff game against the Patriots, heartbreak. 2007 made it to the AFC Championship against the undefeated Patriots, fell short. 2008, that injured knee against the Steelers, another close call. Rivers wasn't just showing up in these games, he was balling out. But something always seemed to go wrong. A fumbled interception return, a missed field goal, a key injury at the worst time. Still, during this period, the AFC West belonged to Rivers and the Chargers. 5 division titles in 6 years. The Raiders, Chiefs, and Broncos, they were playing for second place. Rivers owned the division like it was his personal backyard. Rivers showed up in every rivalry game and every crucial December matchup. We're talking about 63 wins from 2006 to 2011. Only Brady and Manning won more during that span. Think about this. In an era with Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger, and Brees, Rivers wasn't just competing, he was thriving. His peers were building Hall of Fame resumes, and Rivers was right there with them, stat for stat, win for win. The only thing missing? Well, we all know what was missing. This period shows Rivers at his absolute peak, dominating regular seasons, breaking records, and coming oh so close in the playoffs. It's the story of excellence mixed with heartbreak, of individual brilliance that somehow never quite translated to the ultimate team success. Let's talk legacy because Philip Rivers' career numbers will blow your mind. 8th all-time in passing yards, 63,440. 5th all-time in touchdown passes, 421. Completion percentage, 64.9%, higher than Dan Marino, John Elway, or Brett Favre. We're talking about a guy who's literally in the top 10 of almost every major passing category in NFL history. And remember, he did this while starting his career on the bench for 2 years. But then there's that Super Bowl-sized hole in his resume. Here's the thing, though. Rivers faced some of the greatest teams in NFL history during his prime. Those Patriots dynasty teams, he saw them 3 times in the playoffs. The 2007 undefeated Patriots, Rivers had them on the ropes in the AFC Championship, playing on one knee. The 2008 Steelers with their steel curtain defense, another heartbreaker. These weren't just losses, they were epic battles against all-time great teams. Now, let's compare him to his peers because this is where it gets interesting. The 2004 draft class, Rivers, Manning, and Roethlisberger. Big Ben got 2 rings. Eli got 2 rings. Rivers got, well, you know. But here's the crazy part. Rivers has better career numbers than both of them. More yards than Eli, a better completion percentage than Big Ben, and more touchdowns than either of them. Against his AFC contemporaries, only Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were clearly better during his prime years. Think about this. Rivers played in an era with Brady, Manning, Brees, Rodgers, and Roethlisberger, some of the greatest to ever do it. And he didn't just survive, he thrived. He's in the top 10 all-time in nearly every passing category, despite playing in arguably the most competitive quarterback era in NFL history. When you stack Rivers up against history, the numbers say he's one of the best to ever do it. 8 Pro Bowls, 5 playoff appearances, and those astronomical passing numbers. But in the NFL, legacy isn't just about numbers. It's about moments, championships, and what people remember. And that's where the Rivers debate gets complicated. After 16 years with the Chargers, through San Diego and Los Angeles, Rivers had one final chapter to write. 2020, Indianapolis Colts. Some thought he was done, washed up, just hanging on. But Rivers, he had other plans. In that final season, wearing Colts blue instead of Chargers powder blue, Rivers showed he still had it. 4,169 yards, 24 touchdowns, and an 11-5 record. He took the Colts to the playoffs, and in his final NFL game against the Buffalo Bills, he threw for 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even in defeat, Rivers went out throwing punches. Then came January 20th, 2021, the day Philip Rivers called it a career. No farewell tour, no dramatic press conference. Just a simple announcement, classic Rivers style. I'm going to coach high school football, he said. That's right. The guy with over 63,000 passing yards went straight from the NFL to coaching high school ball at St. Michael Catholic in Alabama. But here's the thing that makes this ending so perfect for Rivers. He's doing exactly what his father did. Remember where we started this story? A coach's son in Alabama? Now he's coaching his own sons, building his own legacy in a different way. In his first season as head coach, he led his team to the playoffs. Some things never change. That competitive fire, that southern charm, that passion for the game, it didn't go anywhere. It just found a new outlet. From NFL superstar to Friday Night Lights, Rivers is still out there, still teaching that unconventional throwing motion, still competing, still winning. Different stage, same Philip Rivers. And maybe that's the perfect ending to this story. The guy who was always a little different, who did things his own way, who played with a passion that was uniquely his own. He wrote his final chapter exactly how he wanted to. No Super Bowl ring? Maybe not. But a legacy that goes beyond the numbers? That's something even his critics can't deny. So how good was Philip Rivers actually? Let's settle this debate once and for all. The Hall of Fame case is simple. 8th in passing yards, 5th in touchdowns, 8 Pro Bowls, and a consecutive start streak that defines Ironman toughness. But Rivers' impact on the game goes beyond the numbers. That fiery competitiveness, the trash talking without cursing, yeah, we all remember those dadgummits. The unorthodox throwing motion that worked against all odds. There's never been another quarterback quite like him. We talk about cultural impact in sports. Rivers changed what it meant to be an NFL quarterback. He showed you didn't need perfect mechanics to be elite. He proved you could be a fierce competitor without compromising who you are. That Southern charm mixed with intense competitiveness created a unique NFL personality that fans either loved or loved to hate. But here's what people miss about Rivers. He was exactly what the NFL needed. In an era of corporate-style quarterbacks, Rivers was authentic to a fault. Every emotion, every celebration, every frustration, it was all real. No PR polish, just pure Phillip. Was he the greatest quarterback of his era? No, that's Brady or Manning. Was he elite? Absolutely. Rivers belongs in that rare category of quarterbacks who were great enough to define an era, but human enough to make their story compelling. The lack of a Super Bowl ring doesn't diminish what he achieved. It just makes his story more relatable. So maybe that's the final verdict on Philip Rivers, a quarterback who was better than most remember, more influential than many realize, and exactly who he needed to be for the game of football. The Hall of Fame will come calling, the numbers demand it. But Rivers' real legacy? It's in how he played the game, with passion, authenticity, and that unmistakable Southern style that made him one of the most unique quarterbacks in NFL history. That's how good Philip Rivers actually was. Dadgummit good. Gummit.